For the next 52 minutes, we're joined by documentary filmmaker, musician, good friend of mine, Kevin Booth, also Bill Hicks' producer. His program, of course, American Drug War, has aired, I don't know how many times, 40 times or something last time I heard, on Showtime. It's getting ready to air again. Very, very popular, created a huge buzz. And we happen to have the DVD available at Infowars.com, 2-hour film and 3 hours of extras for $19.95, and you fund the film-making work of Kevin Booth. But he's here because we got the election coming up, and there's different initiatives around the country to try to decriminalize some of the drugs the government uses to get involved in our lives that they tend to ship in as well. And we also have a expert joining us later in the interview, Friends with Kevin. We've got the founder and executive director of the Drug Policy Alliance, a New York City-based nonprofit organization working to end the war on drugs. He's considered one of the most outspoken advocates of drug legalization. Kevin, I appreciate you setting him up for the show today. When is he scheduled to join us on the transmission?
As soon as he gets, he's on an Amtrak heading for his office right now, so as soon as he can get off of the train. So it'll be in the end of the hour.
Did you give him the studio backline?
Yes.
Okay, good. Tell us, number one, let's get into some of the initiatives that are going on right now.
Well, this is Proposition 5 here in California, and it's basically just it's put it this way: the drugs are the prisons, the massive prison guard unions, which I don't even cover in my film, which are very powerful out here, are working hard to stop this thing, because what they try to do, which they've been very successful with, and my film covers, is they make one single category out of nonviolent drug offenders and rapists and murderers, and they try to make it so if you get caught growing a pot plant, that you're going to go and sit in jail with some guy who murdered and raped everybody.
Well, that's because, 80-something% of drug users only smoke marijuana, illegal drug users, and it's modern slavery. Governments have always wanted slavery. You got the private banks that launder the money, that own the private prisons, and then that devalues the base of wages that people are paid. We're competing against the millions of people working in the growing prison industries, and so they don't want it to go away. They want the easy-to-control little weed heads there in their slave pit.
Yeah, no, and it's a way to keep the numbers up. It's all a numbers game. So they if they take all the pot smokers out of this equation, they're going to lose a ton of business. And so they have to flush all these things together. But it's not even just like who they arrest. It also, a lot of it has to do with how many years you get. The sentencing guidelines are big on it too. Whether you get 6 months or 6 years also has a lot to do with how much profit the prison and the guards are going to make. Yeah,
it was pretty shameful a few months ago when I had Ted Nugent on. He was like, throw all the potheads in prison. They're lazy.
Yeah, that'll work. That's a good idea.
That's really good. Good system. I mean, what a corrupt, stinking government. They're pushing Ritalin, Prozac, hundreds of other deadly drugs on the kids in school. Half the public's completely drunken on Prozac. But meanwhile, let's put everybody in jail who smokes marijuana.
No, it's absolutely insane, and giving them longer sentences in some cases. I mean, people get longer sentences for growing pot in some cases than rape or murder.
Well, every week I read about a SWAT team gunning people down in their house who had pot plants. I mean, what's the greater threat, some weed heads or men stomping around knocking down doors at 4 a.m.?
Yeah, no, it's terrible. So, I mean, Prop 5 is, we'll have Ethan on in a little while to explain the specifics of it. My understanding is that it's trying to shift from incarceration over to rehabilitation. It's supposed to save the taxpayers of California approximately $2.5 billion per year.
Yeah, but then the undercover cops can't drive around in brand new Chargers and Porsches and act cool. I mean,
Yeah, and they have to get down. They remember here in L.A. they had that. Oh God, I forgot what they called it. That battering ram thing that they put on the front of this tank.
Well, yeah, I mean, these are guys that are too scared to go join the military. They like picking on potheads. I mean, they got to act tough, man.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, but it's just a way to get those numbers up, keep those prisons full. it's funny. I even gotten some. I got my first angry email. You know, in my film, I talk about the city of Taft because that's where Tommy Chong was at the prison there. I got my first email from a guy in Taft, you know, saying like Taft still has oil, and you know we're not relying on the prison system, and we're a great town. You know, I got all like defensive for his town.
Well, that's like Thule, where the only business was the prison. And they literally, like the old days when just rounded the blacks up and threw them in the slave pit. Well, that's the problem, Kevin. I mean, we've got the vast majority of the public in every poll saying decriminalize marijuana at least, and all these states are trying to decriminalize it, but the feds rove around attacking people. I mean, I don't see how they're going to get away with this drug war forever, so now they're trying to tie marijuana in with terrorism.
Yeah, that was like one of the things that Bush did, you know, right around the creation of the Patriot Act and coming out with that campaign that's in my film, the Nick and Norm campaign, where if you buy marijuana, you support terrorism. And the guy goes, "Is it true?" And he goes, "Because it is true." It's like
the guys at the dinner table going, "Oh, just because I smoke a little weed." I mean,
it is. What's funny about it is that I actually got the copy of the film because I think the guy that plays Nick is actually a struggling actor out here in L.A. and some guy from a editing studio had his actor reel, and we were like looking at this actor's acting reel, and he was like Nick from Nick and Norm. I like fell over and dying laughing.
Oh, whatever.
So
let's just have a moment of silence here.
Okay.
Kevin, so much is going on. Tell the story about how you're flying around the country on the speakers circuit, all these universities, institutions, people want to hear from you with your award-winning film, and how they're trying to stop you from coming to the universities.
Well, first of all, I want to say the biggest conspiracy right now are the people making money off bottled water. If you travel as much as I do, the biggest scam going at the airport right now is give us your bottle of water on this side of this thing, and then you cross through this thing, and then you go, here, you can buy another bottle of water from us, and then they throw all these bottles of water in this giant thing, and they probably move them around back and reconsolidate them and sell them to you. I swear, I was like, what are you going to do with all that water? I guess you should give it to prisoners or something, or give it to doctors. What do you do? What do you guys do with all your bottled water?
But I mean, tell the story about...
Oh, yeah, so I was going to a university in Florida. Where was this? Fort Myers. And somebody there on the faculty, some woman on the faculty started passing around an email to everybody telling them that she was very upset that they were bringing me in as a speaker and that the young students didn't need to be exposed to something this controversial right before an election.
And then tell them the ultimate piece of evidence of your evil.
She said, I discovered that Mr. Booth had worked on Ninja Bachelor Party.
Which is non-sexual. I mean, it's hey, you and Bill Hicks acting stupid, you know, acting like you're going to ninja school.
Ninja Bachelor Parties is like, that's my own Bill Ayers moment, right?
Not once, not twice, well, twice.
Well, at least twice. It wasn't twice. I mean it. Look at my resume. Twice it says.
I was drinking the Robitussin.
No, Dr. Death, that's me. Honey, I'm disappointed in you. We always end up talking about this, don't we? Here, I'll tell you a funny story. So I go to these lecture rooms. I'm in upstate New York about a week ago, freezing cold, Oswego. So many of the kids are apathetic. That's the scary thing, is how apathetic so many kids are.
Well, they're TV heads.
So I do this one classroom. It's really cool teacher. He has me to a second classroom, big lecture hall. I do this little 15-minute set that's like a multimedia presentation with a monologue, and then the Q&A. You get to this section where I'm like, how many kids smoke pot? Or half the room, raises their hands. How many people are stoned right now? Everybody's laughing and joking. So in the corner of my eye, there's this one other guy, young black guy dressed in a pinstripe suit. Doesn't really look like he fits. So I get up and leave, and he's the next speaker. He comes up on after me. It turns out he was a narcotics officer. And so the kids come to my show later, and they thought that I had set him up because I'm like the cool guy that gets up there and like, how many people in the audience do drugs? Everybody raise your hands. Woo! All right, up next, Officer Johnson.
Yeah, and those guys are totally sold into their system. It's their career, so they've got to defend it. And then they'll argue, well, look at all these unsavory types that are involved with drugs. Yeah, because you make it illegal. Now you've just given the criminal element something to make a lot of money off of. But they've got a problem. There are these bigger and bigger organizations forming filled with former narcotics officers and others that go in public saying it's all complete bull.
Yeah, LEAP. Yeah, that's what I tell everybody always. Google LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. That's a really hard one to argue. And just one other thing, look, almost 85% of all kids smoke pot, whether they're good or bad or rebellious or whether they tell you they are and aren't. Kids are most likely, your children are most likely going to try smoking pot. Now, here's a question you got to ask yourself. When they're going to go, do you want them to buy that pot from like some regulated, safe source, or do you want them to get it from a guy that sells crystal meth and crack cocaine?
Well, that goes back to alcohol poisoning. Just went way up. Some estimates 3 times, most estimates 5 times. Alcoholism tripled during Prohibition, and it was bad alcohol.